Your top stories this evening, sponsored by Courts, bringing value home. Guyana maintains Tier 1 ranking on the 2017 USTIP report. Report recommends more work to prosecute traffickers. ExxonMobil's presence here signals good thing for Guyana. It's the best thing to ever happen to Guyana, says Dr. Joey Jagan. And the Police Service Commission nominees fit and proper, says Minister Ramjatan. HGP Nightly News begins now. Good evening to our viewers here in Guyana and online. I am Travis Chase with the Friday, June 29 edition of the HGP Nightly News. Here's what you need to know this evening. Guyana maintains a Tier 1 ranking on the United States Department of State Trafficking in Persons report. The report also encourages Guyanese to place more emphasis on the judicial system and the conviction of traffickers. Jevon Vickery opens our broadcast with this story.
The 2017 report stated, quote, "The government of Guyana fully meets the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking. The government continued to demonstrate serious and sustained efforts during the reporting period. Therefore, Guyana remained on Tier 1. End of quote. Minister of Public Security Kamraj Ramjatan during a press conference on Friday said that while Guyana has not fully stopped human trafficking, the report illustrates that efforts by law enforcement and other stakeholders made a major impact on trafficking. The minister further called on stakeholders in the fight against human trafficking to be encouraged to do more and strive for improvement where needed, but cautioned against falling into a relaxed mood because of Guyana's ranking.
These agents would have listened to this charge and that their efforts were recognized in the U.S. State Department's TIP report through Guyana's continued placement on Tier 1. Having overseen the work of the task force in 2017, I saw task force members and other anti-TIP stakeholders work diligently to assemble a 2017-2018 national TIP action plan and to commence its implementation.
The annual U.S. Trafficking in Persons report examined the TIP situation in 187 countries and territories. Countries are ranked based on a tier system. Guyana's Tier 1 ranking is for countries that meet minimum U.S. standards, Tier 2 for those making significant efforts to do so. Minister Ramjatan stated that while law enforcement officers experience several challenges in investigating acts of human trafficking, the report stated that more protection is needed in the hinterland region.
While we are happy that Guyana has maintained its Tier 1 status, the recommendations included in the report did not go unnoticed. In some of the mentioned areas, such as those pertaining to training, identification procedures and victim services outside the capital, improvement has already started.
Anti-trafficking in persons initiatives funded by the government of Guyana saw several traffickers prosecuted. The 2017 U.S. report advised Guyana to do more with respect to prosecution of human traffickers.
In others, such as with regard to an increase in the rate of conviction, there is much more to be done. Looking forward, I would like to encourage the general public to support the task force and the aforementioned specialized TIP units in reporting the crime to the TIP hotline 227-4083 and 623-5030, and in their public campaigns, starting with those being planned for the commemoration of World Day Against Trafficking in Persons.
Jevon Vickery, HGP Nightly News.
Thank you, Jevon. While many have expressed skepticism about ExxonMobil and the entity's presence here and have concluded that Guyana got a bad deal from the company, Dr. Joey Jagan thinks otherwise about the company and the deal it inked with Guyana. Warren James reports.
The government has been hammered and still continues to be mocked locally by many about the deal it signed with ExxonMobil. There has been mixed views about that deal. On the optimistic side, some persons have expressed concerns about the company because of its reported track record internationally. Dr. Joy Jagan shared his view on the company and the contract reached with the government.
Here, I don't care what anybody says, from Christopher Ram to Christopher Jam. I am saying that the ExxonMobil deal, read my lips, is the best thing that ever happened to Guyana in the history of our life as an independent country. The best thing.
He says Exxon's presence here is signaled that Guyana is really heading into great things. In the process, though, he said politicians need to keep their heads on and ensure that they represent the interest of the Guyanese people.
And by the way, if anybody understands the history of the oil business, the oil industry really started where countries got involved in Iran and Iraq just after World War II, when the first oil, these big oil deals were struck. And Iran and Iraq didn't get no good deal. They got a pittance of the money. The white boys took everything. But 10 years later, through their own diligence and their unity, they were able to turn it around. And the white companies accepted, and they took a smaller share, and Iran and Iraq got more.
Dr. Jagan said the Guyanese people should start coming together to demand from the government what they want to see happening with the oil proceeds. He said one of the first things the government should do is to implement a flat tax system.
When you look at all them in Bahrain and Iran and Saudi Arabia, look at them complexes of processing oil. You think they built it? They didn't build it. It's ExxonMobil and companies like that that build it, and they're coming here to build too. So we should be happy that they can be here, and whatever we get, don't complain. Use your resources to help your people. And by the way, money coming here for the Guyanese people through ExxonMobil and the oil, and all things go up. And the people got to demand from their politicians and their government that they get their fair slice.
Dr. Jagan is urging the Guyanese people to do their own research on ExxonMobil and carefully examine the utterings of some people who obviously have axe to grind. Royden James, HGP Nightly News.
Thank you, Royden. After the break, Police Service Commission nominees fit and proper, says Minister Ramjatan. Stay with us. HGP Nightly News. We'll be right back. Retired Assistant Commissioner of Police Paul Slow, retired Assistant Commissioner of Police Clinton Conway, retired Woman Assistant Commissioner of Police Vesta Adams, and retired Woman Assistant Commissioner of Police Claire Jarvis as nominees for the Police Service Commission. With the constitution of this new board, it now means that President David Granger can appoint a police commissioner following consultation with opposition leader Barra Jagdeo. Minister Ramjatan was asked how soon a new police commissioner would be appointed.
But expect the appointment soon.
Within the anniversary month?
I don't want to give my mouth too much liberty, you know. Sometimes we politicians misspeak.
Travis Chase, HGP Nightly News. Despite the challenges regarding the country's balance of trade, Finance Minister Winston Jordan says there's nothing to be alarmed about. Royden James reports.
A country's balance of trade is the difference in the value between that country's imports and exports. On the export side of things, the Finance Minister explained that Guyana has largely depended on sugar, rice, bauxite, timber and gold for the bulk of its foreign currency earnings. But when the contribution of the sugar industry is subtracted and the other main sectors failing to achieve their targets, all sectors have contributed to the depletion of the balance of payment.
Foreign exchange earnings have been challenged, essentially, with no new industries coming forth to take the space that had been created as a result of the fall off in sugar principally and earnings in some of the other areas.
On the import side, the minister pointed out that the country is doing reasonably well, principally because of low oil prices. He further explained that the country has also been importing capital goods consistent with the expansion in the economy. and also all the capital items that are coming from the petroleum sector will be reflected onto the capital side of the balance of payments.
So immediately what you will find is a so-called deterioration in the balance of payment arising from increased imports of capital items, particularly by the petroleum sector. However, the offsetting entry will be the payments made by the people who own those equipment. So the inflows on the capital side will also go up to finance this, if you see what I mean. I mean, for example, let us go simply. Suppose you buy a refrigerator. Two assets will be moving in different directions. You will now have a fixed asset called a refrigerator, but your cash that you paid for this now will have been depleted, right? Which is also a current asset, would have been depleted by the cost of the refrigerator. Okay? So on the one side, it looks like a deterioration. But on the other side, the cause of this deterioration is reflected there.
Jordan noted that once the Bank of Guyana is not spending lots of its reserve to finance the balance of payments deficit, then surplus on the capital account would need to be financed.
So when people say there was this great deterioration in the balance of payments deficit, it would have shown. But when you look what's the cause of it, you will see on the import side, particularly in capital, there was a wide deterioration on the imports of capital equipment, but financed by the foreign direct investment that would have come for it. Everything that Exxon is important will pass through our accounts, okay? But it's not we paying for it. It's Exxon paying for it, and that will be reflected in in our capital account as inflows, right? As foreign direct inflows.
Mr. Jordan says once the balance of payment ratio is not favorable, that's a cause for some concern, but not necessarily a cause for alarm, since the negative effects are being cushioned. Royden James, HGP Nightly News.
Stay with us. There's more news ahead. Welcome back to the HGP Nightly News. The African Culture and Development Association ACTA says that this year's Emancipation Day celebration on August 1 is expected to attract more than Afro-Guyanese, since the abolition of slavery was not for Africans only, but it transcended cultures and brought an end to all forms of injustice. Jevon Vickery reports.
180 years after Africans were granted freedom in British Guyana and other British territories, the African Culture and Development Association ACDA is getting ready to stage another cultural observance in the national park with several new additions to the annual program. Apart from the free admission of children this year, ACDA will be hosting a stage show featuring local artists. ACDA's Emancipation Coordinator Aisha Jean-Baptiste explained that there are also several planned events that will commence before the main event on August 1. Among those events is a party for the younger crowd. Jean-Baptiste, however, stated that over the years, ACDA has promoted the annual event for mainly African Guyanese. She asserted that Freedom Day, as it's commonly known, is a holiday for all Guyanese.
Because what you find is that most of a lot of people get confused. A lot of the turmoil or a lot of the conflict that happens, or even racism or things that happen, is actually ignorance. Ignorance of other people, ignorance of their culture. And when you study culture, when you understand it, you would understand that we have a lot of things in common. There's a lot of similarities. And when you think, we all love food. You know, we all love music. You know, we have drumming. All cultures, many cultures have different versions of drumming.
The coordinator stated that the event this year will also display exhibits on the accomplishments of Africans around the world. She noted that the participants will be sensitized on how connected all cultures are.
Because when we fought for freedom, it talked, we're anti-all injustice, we're anti-all imprisonment, whether it be indentureship, slavery, any injustice. We fight for equality. So as a group, as a people, being aware of that, everyone should be celebrating emancipation, because that led the way for the end of all kinds of injustice for people in Guyana.
It was not until August 1, 1838 that slavery ended in the British Caribbean. This was the end of a period of apprenticeship. Javon Vickery, HGP Nightly News.
Meanwhile, the organization is celebrating its 25th year. ACDA says that African culture is more widely embraced in Guyana. Javon Vickery reports.
180 years after Africans were granted freedom in British Guyana and other British territories, the African Culture and Development Association ACDA is getting ready to stage another cultural observance in the national park with several new additions to the annual program. Apart from the free admission of children this year, ACDA will be hosting a stage show featuring local artists. ACDA's Emancipation Coordinator Aisha Jean-Baptiste explained that there are also several planned events that will commence before the main event on August 1. Among those events is a party for the younger crowd. Jean-Baptiste, however, stated that over the years, ACDA has promoted the annual event for mainly African Guyanese. She asserted that Freedom Day, as it's commonly known, is a holiday for all Guyanese.
Because what you find is that most of a lot of people get confused. A lot of the turmoil or a lot of the conflict that happens, or even racism or things that happen, is actually ignorance. Ignorance of other people, ignorance of their culture. And when you study culture, when you understand it, you would understand that we have a lot of things in common. There's a lot of similarities. And when you think, we all love food. You know, we all love music. You know, we have drumming. All cultures, many cultures have different versions of drumming.
The coordinator stated that the event this year will also display exhibits on the accomplishments of Africans around the world. She noted that the participants will be sensitized on how connected all cultures are.
Because when we fought for freedom, it talked, we're anti-all injustice, we're anti-all imprisonment, whether it be indentureship, slavery, any injustice. We fight for equality. So as a group, as a people, being aware of that, everyone should be celebrating emancipation, because that led the way for the end of all kinds of injustice for people in Guyana.
It was not until August 1, 1838 that slavery ended in the British Caribbean. This was the end of a period of apprenticeship. Javon Vickery, HGP Nightly News.
Thank you, Javon. Your sportscast is ahead.